The first step to build your roadmap is to get real with yourself. Now, in order to do that, you need to ask yourself a few personal questions. So what I want you to do is get a notepad. You know what? Actually go to your trading journal, because this needs to be on the front page. So every time you open it, you can remember your big goals and ultimately what you're building in this space. We're then going to use these questions to build your strategy. So let's ask the questions. Number one, why did you get into crypto? Is it for money? Is it for freedom? Let me give you my example. I got in for money. I was tired of my parents and family suffering, so ultimately I just wanted money. Now, when I finally made the money, I actually realized that there was a lot more problems and it actually got a lot more harder. Why? Because I only planned for the money. I never asked for freedom. I never asked for anything else. So I got the money, but I ended up being in a very stuck situation. So think about it clearly. Why are you actually getting into crypto? And that brings us to number two. What do you want the money for? You say you want money, you say you want freedom. What for? You want the money to buy Lamborghinis? You want it to buy nice Gucci pants? Or do you want it to help people? Or do you want it to have a free life? Just identify why you're actually doing it. Now, number three, how much money do you want to make? Be realistic. Not how much money do you need to make. How much money do you want to make to create this vision and this life that you want? Be realistic too. You can set any number. If it's $1 billion, prep yourself for a long roadmap. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Of course you can do it. But remember, it's a long road to get there. Or is it $1 million? What makes you happy? What are you doing this for? How much money do you actually want? Number four, now it is time to see where do you stand right now. You're setting your targets, your vacation, where you want to actually go. Where's your starting point? How much capital do you have to start with right now? And that gets us to number five. How much time do you actually have to dedicate yourself to trading and to the crypto space? Now, after those few questions, you have a little bit of an understanding of what you're actually here for and why you're doing it. Guys, it's so important. When you know the steps, you can calculate how to get through each step. So now you got that. Now, there were three main strategies that we're going to use to help you build this roadmap. You have a short-term strategy, you have a medium-term strategy, and you have a long-term strategy. Ultimately, you're going to be using all three at different points in your life. Now, let me explain this. If you have a very small amount of money, you need to focus on step one, not step five. You know, people that have $1,000, they think in their head, how do I make millions of dollars? They don't think about how do I make $5,000 first, and then how do I make $10,000? Do you see when you start setting these ladders, how ultimately you can start building your way up to the big goal? Remember, guys, there is a saying, if you want to walk 1,000 miles, you have to take the first step. So let's do that. Everyone tries to jump the gun. Don't jump the gun. You're going to enjoy the process. I promise you, each level is really cool. And ultimately, you learn many things on the way up. Now, let me show you an example of a roadmap. And this is $100 to $1 million roadmap. Now, if you have a look over here, you could see that the hardest steps are the first two trades. The one that gets you from $100 to $1,000, and the one that then gets you from $1,000 to $10,000. After that, you can see how the percentage goes in half. It starts to get easier. We go from 1,000% all of a sudden to 500% for the next step. Then 100%, then 66%, then 35, then 25, then 20, then 17. Do you see how the hardest steps are the first steps? After that, it starts to get a lot more simpler and a lot more easier. Now, ultimately, you'll be using the short-term strategies to get through the hardest steps. Once you get through those steps, you're actually evolving to become a swing trader. After then being a swing trader and getting to your next level, you'll then be moving into an investor strategy. And you'll see how you basically build your way up on the actual map. So for the hardest and the first steps, the short-term strategy is where it's very powerful. That's the one that gets you to the middle. It gets you to the part of where you can get to become a swing trader. Now let's start off with the first step. Ultimately, you're going to be using a short-term strategy. You're going to be taking trades a few times a week. Then when you get to the level of a $10,000 account, you're then going to become a swing trader. We're going to trade a few times a month. Then when you get to a $100,000, $200,000 account, you become an investor. We trade a few times a year. But do you see ultimately how you're starting to build this roadmap? When you get to a certain level, this is where you shift into a different strategy, you become a different crypto trader, and ultimately you form yourself to get to the next target. Now, it may look very simple on screen, and it may be like, yeah, but is this realistic? It is realistic when you've actually planned and you've structured for it. The problem is people get to levels where they don't know what to do next, and that's why they keep falling from that. But if you already built the system that when I get here, I do this, and when I get there, I shift into this, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier. There are many millionaires/billionaires on this planet. It can be done. They just structured. They just know what they're doing next when they do get there. And now it is time for you to start building this roadmap. So by looking at this, you are going to start getting the doubts. How can you make $100 into $1 million? Guys, this is the beautiful part about the process. This is why the step, by passing each step, how you start molding, how you start building, how you start understanding, and all of a sudden the steps start to get easy. Think about when you start gym. The first few days are really hard until you actually start getting a few weeks in, and then you start becoming ripped, you start eating well. It's the same thing over here. I want you to know that this system does work. We just did this system. I want you to work with those doubts. Don't fight them. Build rules off of them. And then you're using those rules to make you confident in order to take the next step. So looking at this right now, you're probably thinking like, how can I actually make $1 million? I want to explain something to you. As you pass each step, you start to grow more confidence, you start to understand it, and ultimately it starts to get a lot easier. You are going to doubt yourself. The doubts are going to come in at different times. Use these to your advantage. Use them to build your rule systems, and ultimately use them to motivate yourself. But by understanding this roadmap will build you. And as you start passing each level, you'll start to see how fast you can actually get to the true target that you're looking for. Now, we've spoken about these 3 strategies: the short term, the medium term, and the long term. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you guys how we can actually start using this in parts of your life. I'm actually going to give you my strategy. You know, I use my short term to buy me shoes. Did you know that? I'm sure you're pretty interested, right? Let me show you how powerful these strategies actually are.